Next, we have a great team of Yongsu, Blair, and Eliana telling us, I'll let y'all tell us what you're going to talk about.
All right. Here we go.
Hello, I am Blair, and I am a recent MSW graduate from the University of Pittsburgh, along with Eliana Beigel, who is a recent MPA graduate from Gispia, and Yongsu An, who is a PhD student at the School of Computing and Information. So we are bringing a multidisciplinary approach, along with many others from our group CAASI, bringing a multidisciplinary approach to police misconduct in America. So police misconduct, you'll initially think, well, what is police misconduct? There's 100 different things we can do, but the California Innocence Project defines it as illegal or unethical actions or the violation of individuals' constitutional rights by police officers in the conduct of their duties. So this can include everything from false arrest, it can include assault, it can include police killings of innocent or otherwise individuals. And overall, the population has differing views on the amount of accountability within police forces. If you look at this chart, whereas the blue is white Americans, the green is African Americans, and the orange is Hispanic Americans. This represents the percent who say police officers are not generally held accountable for misconduct, with 43% of white Americans and over 50% of Hispanic Americans and Black Americans holding this opinion. So you have to ask yourself, what exactly is the role of police unions in this? Police unions are essentially doing their jobs. They are protecting the police officers and their jobs, and they do this through influencing investigations, engaging in legislative lobbying. And this decline in accountability can also lead to increased misconduct, which has a not as positive effect on a general population. Whereas the unions are concerned about protecting police, it doesn't necessarily translate into protecting the public, because that is not the job of the union. So police disciplinary standards are the result of bargaining between the city and these unions that have only the police officer's interest in mind. And these contracts are public documents, but often they are inaccessible to the average person. And it's important to keep in mind that over 80% of 800,000 police officers do belong to unions. So how exactly does this affect their lives, and what exactly are we doing here? Who are we doing this for? Myself, I am the daughter of a retired police officer. I also work in public safety as a firefighter. So you would think that would somehow give me easier access to understanding exactly what's going on with police. Nope, absolutely not. I'm just as lost. Depending on what side of the street we are working on, we may be working with one police department or another police department, and it could be something as simple as side of the street, city block. Allegheny County, which is a county that includes Pittsburgh and a lot of other municipalities, 130 municipalities to be exact, which includes townships, boroughs, cities, and many other governmental organizations under different names. There's a collection of 130 of them, Pittsburgh being the largest. And we ended up we realized that there a lot of problems. So we decided to use a community-based participatory research approach to go out and recruit our community advisory board, including Take Action Mon Valley, whose picture is up there with us as well. And we went to them and asked them these questions to figure out what we can do in response to everything that had started the summer of 2020. So upon recruiting this community advisory board, or CAB, we came up with 3 main topics that were problematic areas that our community members needed help sifting through. The first was that there is a lack of systemic understanding of legal provisions related to police accountability. That's a lot of fancy words for saying the system is intentionally confusing and intentionally inaccessible to the average citizen. Hyperfragmentation of local police departments was another. As I mentioned, there's 130 different municipalities. There's even more police departments than that. And at any given time, you can drive 1 mile over and you're dealing with a completely different municipality, completely different set of rules. So that happens times 130, and the departments range from 2 officers all the way up to over 1,000 police officers. And thirdly, they have had difficulty navigating the misconduct complaint process. And this also is in part because of just entirely too many, and then not all of the information is available, but Eliana will explain that a little bit better. And in a nutshell, what we really needed and what our community needed when we went to them and said, what do you want? What do you need? How can we help? Basically, what they need is easy, organized access to information. Just the information is super helpful. So with that being said, our goal is to aid citizen-initiated reform with a police contract library. And what this is intended to do is kind of jump in and help them determine the reform targets that they need to do whatever they do in their organizations and through their local activism and advocacy, but actually giving them the tools that will provide the legal provision, keyword-based contract search, and search results and explanation that will help them do what they do to keep my friends and neighbors safe.
Thank you, Blair. All right, so yeah, I'm Eliana. I'm going to talk a little bit about community participation and our data collection and analysis processes. Who are we? We represent Grief to Action. It's the name of a group housed under the University of Pittsburgh Center for Analytical Approaches to Social Innovation. We began over the summer of 2020, also in response to the death of George Floyd. We face multiple challenges doing this kind of work. So on the one hand, we're not doing anything super cutting edge, technologically speaking, so it can be a little more challenging to get grants that way. Inclusion is very important. There, in Pittsburgh, as in many universities, there's a divide between town and gown. Relationships have sometimes been exploitative, and I think the people after us will be talking about that, which I'm very excited for. So trying to make sure that we are including the community, actually working with them, not just creating something and then going, here you go. And also taking a trauma-informed approach to all of this because, of course, police violence, police misconduct, racial inequities are deeply sensitive and painful topics. So we try to really be mindful of that. We meet once a week on Fridays. As I mentioned, we began in June 2020. And we start every meeting with a few minutes of mindfulness and meditation to sort of build a sense of this community. As I believe Blair mentioned, we use a community-based participatory research approach where we are checking in with the community at every stage. So we've done formal feedback sessions. We've also just done, one-on-one check-ins with our various community partners. And to get actually all this done, we crowdsource from our network of volunteers, and we've also had some students in capstone classes help build some of our website. Okay, so Blair introduced those 3 problems that we wanted to address in particular. So we had to start collecting data and creating a strategy for analysis. So to address the lack of systematic understandings of legal provisions in these contracts, we thought it would be really important to get all of these contracts for all of the police departments throughout the county. By our count, there's a little over 100. It's a lot. So we knew we had our work cut out for us there. To address hyperfragmentation, we gathered metadata, just some basic information about these departments. So percentage of the budget spent on policing, number of police officers, and to address the difficulty navigating the misconduct complaint process, we gathered information from a number of different sources about how this process works in the city of Pittsburgh and synthesized them into an easy to understand FAQ that Yongsu will show you. Okay, so by far our biggest challenge here was collecting all these contracts. One thing that was a little bit of a challenge as well is that we're housed in a school of public and international affairs, and we work very closely with some local governments. And in the summer of 2020, especially, anyone asking them questions about their police force put them a little bit on edge. And it's really important to us, obviously, to maintain these relationships with these 130 municipalities. So we had to try to approach carefully. So we crowdsourced through our volunteer network. Some folks knew people in these municipalities and were able to just get it through a friendly ask. We did a round of emails, and ultimately we had to submit right to know requests. Okay. It's like a Freedom of Information or FOIA request, just allows the public to request a government document, which again, these contracts are public documents. They're just often very difficult for the public to get. Okay, so once we had all these contracts, we had to actually analyze them. So we used the framework designed by the National Police Reform Organization, Campaign Zero. They recently did an analysis of, I believe, 86 of the largest cities in the country, and with a team of police misconduct experts as well as legal scholars, they sifted through those contracts, identified language within those contracts that can be a barrier to transparency and accountability, and then categorized them into 6 different types of problematic language. So I will not go through all 6. So one example of the disqualifying misconduct complaints category we've taken just from Jersey City, which says that disciplinary charges must be brought within 30 days, which means if a police officer hurts you and it takes you 31 days to go file that report, they will not investigate it. So that's the kind of thing that is unfortunately pretty common throughout these kinds of contracts. All right, so we were hoping that we would be able to build on their groundwork using machine learning. So we had their data set of over 1,000 phrases that they had gathered from all of these different contracts. So we were hoping to identify words that we could then search for within our own contracts to more easily identify this stuff. Unfortunately, wasn't super helpful. So we found that 3/4 of these results were from just California, Florida, and Texas. Only 2 were from Pennsylvania. And 60% of the phrases belong to only 3 categories. So as much as we tried 3 different machine learning models. We just found that there was really limited generalizability. The content of these contracts are quite similar, but there's different idiosyncratic language. Importantly, we found some false positives that showed up in the national data as indicating something problematic, and then in our own contracts actually did not indicate that. So we had to do it a little by hand, a much less low-tech way. We had to do a qualitative analysis of it. So we decided to kind of create our own keyword guide. So initially we just skimmed these contracts for the relevant sections. So discipline, investigations, look for language that falls into those 6 categories, and just take note of which words tend to appear most frequently, create a provisional keyword list. And then we just did some basic keyword testing through Control F just to see if we could screen out false positives and to see if we could consistently find these kinds of problematic results. So one example here from Baldwin Township, one of those 130 uses both of our keywords, complaint and accused. And this just says that the officer will be given the complaint that someone filed, so they know exactly what they're accused of, which maybe not a great policy. Okay. So having gathered all that information and started to analyze it, we had to actually design a system and implement it. So I'll hand it over to Yongsu.
Thank you, Elena. So far we talked about the study motivation, problems in police accountability, how we tackled it with participatory design, and data collection and analysis. So on top of these collective efforts, we implemented a web-based system for the increased transparency. So our tool is available at grift2.action.org. So feel free to check it out. Overall, our system is designed to meet the 4 requirements, which ended up with a full stack web-based system. So first, the backend component is to organize disparate information, including tax corpus for police union contracts, and metadata about police departments, and also the output of our qualitative analysis in a more structured way. With this backend support, we implemented a visualization interactive interface consisting of 3 tools to tackle the rest of the requirements. So the core of our system is contract search tool, which helps users better browse and understand police union contracts. But because what we deal with is legal information and terms, which is pretty much challenging to understand. So we paid attention to the feedback from user study about how this type of legal information and the level of search task was found easy or difficult. Then we found in the user study that even for experts with prior knowledge, they coming up with what kind of keywords they can search for wasn't an easy task. So overall, the discrepancy between legal terms and everyday language was identified as a challenge, not only for experts with prior knowledge, but also for everyday citizens. So based on this observation, this tool serves as a keyword search tool, but we also provide a list of curated keywords. Yeah, then this kind of keywords may not be easily understandable when it's not put into context. So we also provide some descriptions about what are the problematic keywords, but what are the problematic categories those keywords belong to, so that they can more easily understand what the keyword mean in the context of contracts. The system also aims to give a geospatial overview of police unions, so users can easily locate the region of interest over the county. But we also provide a list of keywords so that they can easily understand whether certain problematic keywords appear over the regions, so that then this map highlights the regions whose regions and the police departments whose contract include those keywords. Then users can kind of compare what would be the distribution of the problematic keywords appearing in the contracts. The last key component is the misconduct complaint tool. As Eliana said, the process of filing a complaint is a very complex process and also different across different police departments. So we visualize this complex process into 5 streamlined steps in a simple process diagram. Once clicking on a specific stage, then our interface shows what to expect in each stage, and also frequently asked questions compiled by our experts in our team. So as a future work, we plan to make our tool available to any other local communities and counties, so that they can easily kind of put their file, then they can deploy their system. So we identify 2 required tasks. First, our tool needs to be packaged in a way that other community groups easily deploy the system. But we also try to standardize the input procedure so that they can easily prepare whatever the input file to be fed into the system. Yeah, overall, our study was co-developed and launched with the community with over 70 people, collaborators throughout 2 years. But we see that there are still many gaps. One of challenges we have is that our approach is qualitative and static. So we currently rely on campaign zero data to identify relevant legal provisions and translate them to local keywords in a qualitative manner. But what we observe is that citizen needs are kind of evolving. So in a recent feedback session, we found that people's concern about police misconduct is shifting from accountability to causes of misconduct. So to keep our tool being more keep relevant to what people really cares about. The mission is to kind of better connect these everyday language to potentially relevant legal provisions. Then this kind of process needs to be more dynamically done. Then another one is to how we automatically come up with some recommended keywords so that citizens can explore the prevalence of these provisions. So yeah, our study could have been impossible without collective efforts and knowledge from a huge group of people from different backgrounds. So we would like to thank all our collaborators. If you are interested to join us, then
Oh, is that me?
yeah, then feel free to reach out. So thanks for listening.
Awesome for the thank you talk. Thank you for the awesome talk.
Did we take our whole time?
No.
Oh, let's all three get.
I think we have time for maybe a question while we
Okay.
transition to the next speaker.
Is that we can all three be on screen for 1 second?
Yeah.
Thanks so much. That was a great talk. I was curious, I've seen a lot of work come out of Allegheny County related to policing, and I was wondering if you think that this participatory type of approach was so successful because this is a community that's participated in this research before, or if not.
Blair, do you want to?
I can take a stab at that one. I think especially with the history of the university and the community, it's important that some of these initiatives are more community driven versus us just researching the community. So with this, we're making the community members partners in our research. So they're working alongside us. They're giving us feedback and suggestion that's going to the various teams to improve it. So instead of us coming in and saying, this is what we want to do, we're taking the cue from the community. And I think that will make a difference because we have activists that have been out there fighting for decades, generations even, to bring upon this. So it just feels responsible for us as a university to basically let them drive the motivations behind the work and us using our resources and everything else to accomplish that goal. And it kind of feels like the least we could do after, history.
Great. Let's thank the speakers again. Due to a last minute change, sort of